Hello, welcome back to another edition of Road Talk with Cade. Today in my life is December 6th, 2025. Boy, does it feel good to say that in English again. Well, folks, we've made it to December, which means this is the penultimate episode of the year, which will cover my last personal trip of 2025. Starting back home in the great state of Wisconsin for deer hunting, one of the best weeks of the calendar year back home, from hunting to Thanksgiving to football. Just a perfect stretch of time to enjoy what Wisconsin has to offer. For me, I was able to take down once-in-a-lifetime Wisconsin whitetail. After 26 hours in a deer stand, over a 3-day period, I had only seen 2 does up to that point. I was down on my luck. On Monday night, a few minutes before dark, all that luck changed. I knew there was a big buck floating around the property. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught it crossing through the field to the north of me, away from the direction I was set up to shoot. The buck in question was on a dead sprint through the field. I don't know what spooked him in my direction, but I can only say by the grace of God that I was able to get a shot off on him. He dipped through the ditch, walked into my view, but before I could pull the gun up and take a shot, he turned in a direction not allowing me to get one off. He walked straight away from me, then turned quartering away when I let the bullet fly. I drilled him right through the front leg, from a distance of 216 yards freehand, meaning I had nothing to rest my gun on. I still can't believe I hit him at all. After the bullet flew, I didn't know anything at the time. My adrenaline was pumping so high, I couldn't even think straight. Unfortunately, due to the inaccurate shot, we had to track him over 3/4 of a mile and overnight before the hunt was put to a rest. I don't have any footage of the hunt, but it was a once-in-a-lifetime experience that I'm very happy I got to share with my brothers and father. To end the stay at home, I made a major mistake locking my brother and his girlfriend out of their house the night before Thanksgiving. Burning a bridge to the point I don't think I'll ever get to sleep in my childhood home again, which is rather unfortunate and I feel horrible about, but it was an honest mistake. Outside of that, it was a well-fulfilled trip home, spent with friends, family, and a tree stand. The day after Thanksgiving, Friday, November 28th, 2025, I boarded a plane in the morning bound for Kansas City, Missouri. The flight was a quick up and down from Green Bay to Minneapolis, then again from the Twin Cities to Kansas City. Immediately upon landing, I was in a rush to the rental car counter. The first stop of the day was in Lawrence, Kansas, for the Kansas vs. Utah college football game. I did not make it for kickoff, but arrived at the stadium halfway through the first quarter. The reason for me going to Kansas for a football game was rather odd, but I needed to check off Kansas from my state's visited list. So to tie that into the most neat possible trip ever, I went to the Kansas game on Friday and the Kansas State game on Saturday. I will get to the second day of the adventure later, but Lawrence, Kansas was a great college town. The stadium, which reopened this year, is a unique structure. It fits the university's campus and surrounding area very well. Also, the head football coach, Lance Leipold, won 6 national titles at UW-Whitewater in the late 2000s and early 2010s, so I had some Wisconsin ties to the game. A game in which Utah won 31-25 in cold, windy, 26-degree weather. My highlight from the experience inside the stadium has nothing to do with the game, but rather the view from the stadium. In the north end zone of the stadium, the view from your seat is the University on the Hill and a memorial tower for World War I, which provides a wonderful backdrop to look over during the game inside David Booth Stadium. Post freezing my ass off, I traversed farther west to the city of Topeka, the state capital of Kansas, to see the state capitol building, which was closed due to the Thanksgiving holiday weekend. From the outside of the building, I found it to be one of the finest state capitol buildings I've visited. The dark roof gives the building a beautiful finishing touch. The copper dome contrasts from the lighter marble covering the rest of the building, making the structure feel more dominant around its surrounding city landscape. My next stop was at the Overland Station Museum, a grand train station built by Union Pacific for the growing city of Topeka during 1927, when rail travel was peaking during the Roaring Twenties. The museum inside was closing in 20 minutes, so I was unable to go inside the building, but I enjoyed my view from the outside of the important structure. Train stations at one time across the country were the most marvelous of structures, allowing travelers to come and go in the most efficient manner around the United States. Very unlike today. With my architecture stops done for the day, the Badgers men's basketball game was tipping off, so I stopped at Jeremiah Bullfrog's Bar and Grill around the block for some dinner. I sat down to watch the game and eat, finding a great lack of entertainment from the poor performance on the court. The food and hospitality was nothing short of great. After a meal, I took myself to the hotel for an early night, as I was so exhausted from my previous time at home, and after the day's travel, I had nothing left to give. My second day's adventure started much like the last. After sleeping in, I woke up at 7:45 a.m., which is crazy late for myself. I got my day moving much slower than I planned on, with an hour drive from Topeka to Manhattan, Kansas, with the later half of the trek in the middle of a rather aggressive snowstorm. Not quite a blizzard, but definitely a travel-affecting amount. Up until an hour before game time, there was a steady rain falling that started the night before. I feared I was in for a rough day bearing the elements, so for the rain to turn to snow was a rather relieving sight. Parking the car on a side street a few blocks from the stadium, I bundled up the best I could. Then I walked over to the stadium while listening to the band play the national anthem and taking in the flyover as it crossed above my head. Much like the day before, the weather was not ideal for the spectators in the stand. Upon kickoff, there was a steady snowfall and winds gusting up to 40 miles per hour, cutting through the stadium. Not ideal for me and my tennis shoes. But football is supposed to be played in football weather. Alas, the elements were to my detriment. However, they fit what I was looking for on this fine weekend. Bill Snyder Stadium, a cathedral in the prairie, much like the stadium I saw before, fits in Manhattan quite well. With Kansas State being more of a tech and ag school, the castle-like facade gives it a much more ruffian feel. Home to Packers legend Jordy Nelson, this place again had ties from home that drew me to the location. The game as a whole can be described as a slog. With the rain the night before and the snow falling, the field was a slippery mess, both teams struggling to find their footing as the game progressed. As for most of the random college football games I go to, I am more interested in the stadiums, campuses, coaches, and programs' history than the games themselves. So the game being boring didn't bother me one bit as I snooped around the stadium. After the slow seeping of cold through my entire body, I returned to the car, then blasted the heat to hopefully once again feel my feet, which did happen after a little while driving. From Manhattan I drove southward to the biggest city in Kansas, Wichita, which to many surprise, no, Kansas City is not the largest city in Kansas, as most of it lies on the Missouri side of the state line. While on my drive, I watched football on my phone, again watching my beloved Badgers disappoint me in the process, all over again. On the drive, I was able to take in the beautiful Kansas countryside that so many despise as too flat for their liking. I found the state to be much hillier than I expected, with the state's lowest point of elevation being only 600 feet above sea level. Counter with its highest point on the other side of the state, Mount Sunflower, peaking over 4,000 feet in elevation. So yes, it may appear rather flat in the car, but in reality, it is one giant slope from northwest down to southeast. One last note from my drive, I couldn't believe how many oil derricks I saw on that 2.5-hour car drive. When I think of Kansas, oil production was not even something I considered. To my amazement, though, they seemed to produce a rather large amount of it from what I could see from the highway. After arriving at my hotel, the plan for dinner that night was White Castle, as Wichita is where the fast food restaurant originally started, to then find out no locations still exist in the city, which I found to be heartbreaking information. So I settled for a different local fast food joint, Spangles, a 1950s themed burger restaurant serving burgers, fries, and shakes across 27 locations in the state. To finish my second day on the trip, I again spent a night in the hotel room watching the Iron Bowl between Auburn and Alabama. I really wanted to go out and explore a little bit, but after the week I had, there was just no juice left in my body to go anywhere. Still days later as I write this, my body is just completely waxed of energy. I pushed myself too hard the last half of the year and need to rest for a while, which won't be happening. The third day of my trip was an aggressive windshield day, as I turned the wheel southward to make my way to Ponca City, Oklahoma, another state that I needed to check off my list of 50, which was my fourth new state of the year. Counting the fact that I visited 2 countries instead of 1, that would complete my New Year's goal of visiting 5 new states and 1 new country, I think, as countries are a lot harder to visit than states are. We can get more into that in the 2025 recap next episode. My first stop of the day was at the Garrett Wrangler restaurant for breakfast in Ponca City, followed by my main destination, the E.W. Marlin Mansion, the founder of the Marlin Oil Company and the 10th governor of Oklahoma. His grand estate that you see here is built in a Mediterranean revival style, with the mansion that is now a museum being closed because it was a Sunday. The stop was a rather quick walk around the premise of the building. Then I sat myself back in the car, driving north to the city of Wichita. It dawned on me on that return trip that everything I planned on seeing that day was most likely going to be closed because it was Sunday. So I looked up all the stops that I was planned on seeing, and yes, everything was going to be closed. After realizing that, I decided to change my plans for the day and hit one stop in Wichita, then drive to Kansas City that afternoon. That one stop said it was closed online, but when I arrived there, it was open for the day. Still though, I wanted to make that one specific stop at the Frank Lloyd Wright Allen House in Wichita, Kansas, as my interest in architecture directly derives from the Wisconsin native Frank Lloyd Wright, the father of American architecture. This was the first house of his that I've been able to tour, the final prairie-style house in his collection of masterpieces. The home, built in 1917, was made for Henry J. Allen, a prominent newspaper owner in Wichita, and an even more prominent Kansas politician. The house is heavily influenced by Wright's simultaneous project, the Imperial Hotel in Japan. Wright's attention to detail in the home is truly remarkable, as every aspect of the design was done for a reason, from the coloring of each section of the wall down to the last detail. His ability to transform space into feelings is remarkable. He is able to design rooms in ways that your eyes lead you to where he wanted you to look for the best view from that seat. I could have spent all day inside that house, wandering around. With a 2-hour house tour completed, I made the drive to Kansas City to finish my day, which ended up being a great decision as I woke up to a world covered in white snow the next morning. To end my day in Kansas City, I again found myself some dinner, then retired early for the night. This time trying some famed Kansas City barbecue at Jack Stack Barbecue. Indulging in pork burn ends, beef brisket, and short ribs, I devoured the entire plate to the detriment of my own health. Kansas City barbecue, being centered around a tomato base, was a simple enough fact that I knew I was going to love it, as all of my favorite barbecue sauces, besides Alabama white sauce, are tomato-based. With another early night in bed, Monday was my last vacation day of 2025. Not really, as I'm going to be spending my last 2 weeks of the year back home in Wisconsin. But this is my last personal travel day, not being somewhere I normally would. As stated, earlier it was a snowy morning in Kansas City that progressed into an even snowier day. My one last stop of vacation in 2025 was the National World War I Museum, which I found to be one of the best curated museums that I've ever visited. I'm not going to share any more details with the museum than that. Everyone knows I love World War I, but I'd rather end discussing this trip as a whole. From college football, to architecture, to military history, I checked all the boxes I needed to make the perfect vacation for Cade. I think this was the perfect culmination of my 2025, as this really has been my year. Stay tuned for more of that, as the next episode and last episode of the year will be my full recap of the 2025 calendar year. With that being said, thank you for listening. I love you.